Welcome to the Lovecars On The Grid podcast, your global motorsport roundup with me, Tiff, Needell and Paul Woodman.
Welcome to Lovecars On The Grid, your global motorsport podcast roundup. It wasn't exactly the busiest weekend, but there's still lots of news and gossip and things to talk about in terms of the world of motorsport. We're going to kick off with a bit of news, going to talk about the Macau MotoGP. And of course, we've got to talk about the upcoming Vegas GP. But before we do, I want to say a bit of sad news for me personally, not quite motorsport, but certainly within the automotive industry. Lost a friend and a colleague this week called Stephen Jackson. He was from Rolls-Royce Sunningdale. And he was just, it's so easy to say when someone passes Tiff, but he was just such a nice guy. He was friendly to everybody. We dealt with him on content creation, and whoever it was in terms of the camera crew, me, whoever, he would treat everybody with the same respect and dignity. And it's a real loss. He's only 58, really sad.
Oof.
So,
had he been ill for long? Or?
No, it was really sudden as well. So, maybe that's a good way to go, but there's no good way to go, is there? Especially at the age of 58.
No.
And it's put so much into perspective. I've had this awful toothache all weekend. You just think, get over it. Some poor guy my age, our age, has just lost his life. His family's lost somebody. But so anyway, big respects to Stephen Jackson. Who was a lovely, lovely man, and he'll be missed by all of his friends and family. And it's hard to move on from there, but we've got to move on to some news. I've got a little bit of news. Not that much going on. F1 revenues are up, and we'll come on to...
No, I haven't read anything interesting in the apart from, I don't know, they're reducing the time for appealing, but nothing else in the gossip world. Why have you picked up on some stories?
I got a little bit of gossip. What do you think who do you think the most influential single person has been to Red Bull's success, to attribute Red Bull's success over the last couple of seasons? Who would you say?
Adrian Newey. Newey is the man. Newey and his aero cleverness.
Well, this is really interesting because Adrian Newey hasn't had anything to do with the last two winning Red Bull cars, the last two seasons. He's had nothing to do with it personally, directly. He's always there, and he's got
a team. Sure, I know he's got a team under him. Not his surely team. The overall concept.
It's not his team. He's there as a consultant. He's on a consultative basis, not there about the aerodynamics, which is blown my mind.
Who's this source? Name your source.
It's from a very reliable source. I think there's going to be an article coming out fairly soon. But it just shocked me because we've always spoke about Red Bull's success coming from Adrian Newey, and maybe historically it had.
I mean, I know
the last two seasons it's not. There's a lot more people that involved, and he's not even signing it off. He's there as a consultative role, which is quite fascinating, really.
I know he's always got a team. I've always known he's not. He steps back a bit, but well. I'm looking forward to reading more.
Watch your space. And in terms of Red Bull, obviously it's a done deal now with what's going on this season. But we move on to Las Vegas, and everybody's...
Las Vegas, baby.
Are Red Bull going to dominate there? I don't think they're going to. Well, nobody seems to know. I mean, it's a bit of a finger in the air.
Hold on a minute. The result of the race is completely irrelevant. Nobody's caring who's going to win or lose at Vegas, baby. It's all about the show. It's all about how much you're spending on your corporate hospitality.
No, it's not. That's all changed now.
Max has come out and said, it's not much of a track, And Max has said, wasn't it something like, we're only there to be part of the show? And before we have to discuss the show and the money. I mean, it's all mind blowing. For me, of course, I'll start out. So I hope that it's a miss rather than a hit, because I don't like the way that Formula One is going to rich people who don't give anything about the sport itself, but just want to turn up at Miami to be seen in Miami. I know that's where the money's going. I know, which is why I hope it falls flat on its face. But that's just my personal view. However, we have to look at it. I looked at the track. I did a lap of the track on internet. I think it's the same as Max has been used, just the Formula One racing. And it's an intro, but it's just all straight to tight corners.
You think that yours is the same as Max's sim, do you? Your little computer doing a lap.
He's not on a simulator. This was before he got on his simulator. This is just using the Formula One the game. And the one of the intro at the start is quite interesting at the beginning, because if you're on the back 3 or 4 rows, you start into a kink, which with all this traction, with these high torque cars, I'm sure it's going to be a bit of a problem. I think they'll be drifting through the kink before they even get to the start line. Turn one's a big hairpin left, always important. I think it's going to be tight again, but at least it doesn't immediately turn right like those horrible chicanes. But it's second gear, a bit like Druids, that sort of shape of left hand. But then it immediately goes into a long right. So as soon as you sort of exit the hairpin, you're going to have to get back to single file, which will cause a bit of wheel banging and people not getting in the way. And then you start the back straight from turn 4 to 5, the first DRS zone. It's quite good. The two DRS zones are opposite side of the track. So a longish back straight, nothing like as long as the main straight, down to another second gear right-hander. So you might get some overtaking there. And then it goes into a pretty silly left, right, left, over curbs, second gear, back to second gear. Most of the corners are second gear. I think every corner is second gear.
Really?
Watching the PlayStation. Yeah, well, there are some flat out kinks, if you count them. They're all counted as corners, aren't they? Because after that complete mess of a 6, 7, 8 turns of curbs in second gear, there's a flat right and a flat left, which looks good on the map, but is in fact you'll just have to single file through it before you go down to another second gear left-hander, which heads out onto this great, what's it called, the Las Vegas Boulevard, where again there's a kink at the beginning of it, but it's incredibly long. Watching on the PlayStation game, you're sitting there. So it's going to have to be a fairly low downforce setup, I imagine. And of course, there's DRS there. The thing is, having never raced there before, every year with a DRS, they tend to tweak it, don't they? Because last year it was a drive-by, and this year it wasn't enough. So they're able to play. Now, obviously, they got a rough idea from what's the street circuit in the Middle East, Far East, not Far East, the Russian one,
Saudi Arabia,
the Russianish one. Azerbaijan. It looks almost that length. It's a long straight. Azerbaijan, of course, begins with those twists. And then at the end of that, there's, guess what, another second gear corner. But that also goes left, right, left straight after it. So any half past, either at the turn 1 or at turn 17, is going to lead to wheels clashing. And then there's just a flat out left to the finish.
So if you didn't understand what Tiff was saying about the turners and lefts and rights, just imagine an upside down pig with his legs up and his trotters and his trotters up and his nose sort of pointing that way, so left, and that's what the circuit looks like, an upside down pig. Have you seen that?
You think that's helped my explanation, my brilliant lap of the track going left and right? You felt it necessary to come out with an upturned pig to help our listeners understand. Basically, it's a lot of straights and a lot of second gear corners, which if they've got the DRS wrong, will be a complete bore. If they got the DRS wrong the other way, will be massive overtaking.
So hypothetically,
then of course,
it's one of the. It could be a bit of an engine smasher. Get down into second gear from such massive, long, flat out.
But those engines, the computers manage all those downshifts. But then we move on to this temperature issue. And that's probably the biggest talking point, I think, the whole Vegas thing.
Everybody thought, Vegas is going to be pool party, sunshine. Well, it's November and it's bloody cold. It's 7 degrees. It's going to be 7 degrees.
And they're starting at 10 p.m.
Yeah,
10 p.m. it kicks off. Then there's looking like about 11 degrees. I've read some people say it's going to be 6 degrees. I think 11 or 12. Some forecasts have rain, even a small percentage.
When it starts at 10, it will be 11 or 12. But when it gets to midnight, when it finishes, it'll be 7 degrees. It's the desert. The temperature just it will.
All right.
I'm a weatherman.
Anyway, you're going to have to get up at 4:30 in the morning on Friday to get the first view. First to FP1 for this intriguing. It's intriguing. Will the surface be grippy?
Yeah.
It's everybody's going to watch this first with massive interest. I'll be hoping it's a disaster. So they lose money and go back to Spa and go back to India and go back to Sepang in Malaysia, which were 2 tracks that Tilke built that were quite reasonable, actually. The race, of course, 6 o'clock on Sunday morning. Well, I'll be asleep. I'll have it on record. Get out of bed. Don't listen to any social media.
I'll phone you at 8 and tell you the news. Who won?
But then we look at the money side of it. I mean, I've just been doing some reading. It's the most bizarre thing. So it would appear that Liberty, because they bought all this. So Liberty have bought land. They built the pits complex. Apparently, they started off with a $240 million budget. They're now reckoning they've spent $500 million on creating this thing, and then the project goes till 2032. So that's their sort of looking ahead. Obviously, it's losing money hugely this year. They've even got 40 million out of the local government from Las Vegas, because I think it's bringing people, bringing money, bringing everything to Vegas.
Well, so they thought.
But having said that, exactly. So they thought, but now we're having these stories that the ticket prices have been dropped. There was some Paddock Club seats going for $22,000, maybe even more. I've read some bits. So if you take your family of four, that's $100,000 to watch cars go meow, 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 and then watch it all on the TV screen and drink more free drink. And that's before you've flown there or driven there or got the hotel. $20,000 to watch a 2-hour motor race.
Unbelievable.
But
even you couldn't drink that much champagne, Tiff.
The hotel deals are all dropping. In fact, hotel rooms that were $1,000 a night are now sort of coming down drastically. So people that have spent $1,000 and now want their money back, because they're saying, well, hold on a minute, the price has dropped. We bought early.
The prices now for hotels are the same as they are on a normal weekend in November. So, a couple $100 for a hotel night.
A lot of the locals have been moaning about the disruption it's caused, And of course, they've had to. The other thing I read, the Sphere, which looks like incredible.
Yeah, it's amazing.
In concert, it just looks amazing. Because that's in the middle of the track, they've had to buy the lease of it for 3 weeks. They've kicked you two out. Off you go, Bono. And so they've compensated the Sphere owners, whatever the rental is, to take it over 3 weeks.
A different Bono will be there this week.
Yes. So obviously they say that they haven't got much there. They've got a sort of a party after the race inside it, and there'll be something kicking off. But again, you've got, it's sort of like, if other people have gone to Vegas, want to go for the concerts and stuff, well, they can't, the Sphere's shut. So, unless it's full of motorsport fans, the other people there are going to be a bit pissed off if they can't walk
Motorsport
down. I think they're going to open the road, aren't they?
Vegas. It's for the whole entertainment. It is for the parties and the after parties as well. But they got massive egg on their face because, as you quite rightly said, everything has plummeted in terms of price, and now they can't give it away. They got too many tickets. They can't give it away. There'll be empty grandstands. There'll be cold, miserable people with empty grandstands on race day. I'm telling you, there will be. And in terms of FP1 and quali, don't expect to see many people there.
So, but basically, we have to accept that Formula One, the greatest formula in motorsport, is now a sideshow. It's all it is, a sideshow.
Well, it's more than that, but it is becoming too entertainment-oriented, as far as I'm concerned. Watch some Caterham racing.
Well, I hope everyone that goes is miserable after. The trouble is, if you spent $100,000 taking your family to Vegas, you told all your friends, we're going to Vegas. You don't come home and say, God, that was boring and dull. We were ripped off. Because then you feel embarrassed. You've wasted your $100,000. Well, there we go. But I mean, obviously, it's the race. I'm still intrigued by the race. I'm intrigued by the temperature thing, the management. We might get some strange results if these tyres.
I hope we do. I hope we get some strange results.
So that's what I'm looking forward to mainly. To see how the DRS works.
But we've been there before.
I always put it now.
We've been there before when they say, it's going to be a weird one this weekend, and not sure how this team's going to do. And then every time Max goes, every single time. But I'm looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to it just because of the intrigue, as you say. And it will be a spectacle. It is Vegas, and it is one of the most exciting places in the world. Adults Disneyland. Right, let's go to another Disneyland, Adults Disneyland, Macau, where you've raced many times.
Well, MotoGP first. With the Macau second, that was because that's in the middle of the week. Because it was MotoGP was in Singapore. I mean, I'm saying Malaysia.
Malaysia, yeah.
And there was Macau. It's only really building up. The Macau Grand Prix is this weekend, but they had some Formula 4 races last weekend. MotoGP. It was a strange. Wasn't as exciting as last week by far. It was a bit of a procession, to be honest. It's still this battle between Ania Bagnaia in the factory, Ducati trying to hold off the Jorge Martin in the Pramac bike. But it wasn't just those two on the pace this weekend, because Enia Bastianini, who is Bagnaia's teammate, had this awful crash. It was Portimao, was badly injured. He's taken all year to get back to fitness. But he qualified third, so it was Bagnaia and Martin first and second, then Bastianini. And then Alex Marquez, all of a sudden, these Gresini Ducati satellites. It was all Ducati, all first six were Ducatis, in fact, on the grid. So Alex Marquez, whose brother is joining him next year, the Marc Marquez, getting rid of his terrible Honda. So they've all of a sudden, Grassini Ducatis had become popular, whereas the VR46 satellite Ducatis were 5th and 6th, ahead of Brad Binder, KTM 7th, Fabio Quartararo, Yamaha 8th. And then 9th, the Aprilias, that some race in the middle of the year, I think they dominate. Was it Silverstone, I think, even, where they just dominated? Everyone came first and second. There was the bike to have. It's got these big front wings. But they're going backwards recently. And Maverick Vinales, who was 9th, apparently the aero on the bike is hot, as it was 30 degrees temperature or something out of Malaysia. But the Aprilia somehow keeps the heat in, and it sort of sucks the engine heat up onto the riders. And apparently the riders are saying that they're in a little area of 60 degrees centigrade or 70 degrees centigrade. They said they can't ride the thing.
Wow.
So aero's got different problems with the bikers. And then the tyres were a problem. So again, like Formula One, we've talked about this before with MotoGP. They set these minimum tyre pressures, so which Michelin do. It's Michelin, isn't it? Yeah. So it's down to 1.88 bar. And you have to be above that for 30%, whatever it is, of the thing, the rules, don't know the finite details. And if it's lower, apparently they worry about the tyres getting damaged. They run it too soft, so the sidewall isn't held up. The sidewall will get damaged, so the tyre might explode. And so they have to have these minimum tyre pressures. So it's 1.88 bar. But all the riders are over 2 bar, they just become solid balloons and have no grip and won't stop. And they just have no grip. And so all the riders are now, they're saying that a bit like, Formula E, and when I talked about in Formula One, the sprint race in Brazil, where everyone was just backing off and coasting, they're all just saying they can't race. They're just saying, because you don't think a bike's so narrow, but they all say if you follow a bike in front, just a little heat wave of a bike in front heats up your front tyre. So your front tyre goes straight over 2 bar, and then you can't follow them. And so it was a very processional racing in Selangor, in Malaysia, because of this problem. The sprint, actually, Alex Marquez won it, leapt from 3rd on the grid or whatever, 3rd on the grid, got through to the lead after a couple of laps and walked away. Martin did come 2nd, from Bagnaia 3rd, and Bastianini 4th. These 4 riders dominated the whole weekend. And so by coming 2nd to 3rd, Martin got 2 points closer, gapped the dad just 11 points behind Bagnaia, to which Motorsport said, Martin slashes the championship lead. They do get carried away sometimes, don't they? 2 points nearer. And it's like they got 350 points each. I don't know how many it is, but I quite think that's slashing. Anyway, in the main race, which was duller than ever, the front 4 really spread out. Bastianini got into the lead to win, walked away with it. Everyone was very happy because he's had his injuries come back, so everyone was over the moon. Alex Marquez got 2nd, so another great race for Grassini, and Bagnaia was 3rd, and he beat Martin into 4th. So he slashed. No. What's the opposite of slashing? So he maxed his lead out to 14 points from 11 because he came 3rd instead of 4th. But they were all spread out. There was no racing, a bit of racing going on behind them, but really not a very exciting race for MotoGP this weekend. But the championship is still the feature. 2 rounds still to go. Just 11 points or 14 now. So that's what we're waiting for. Moto2 equally dull. Fermin Aldeguer led a Spanish 1-2-3, leapt off the line, went away, won easily. Pedro Costa cruised to 2nd because he knew if he got above 4th, he would be champion. The way the motorbike boys do win bigger championships. So he comes round to about turn 4. There was this theatre. Valentino Rossi started this. It was like a theatrical story that the mechanics would go out there. And if they'd got these 4 hoardings up, a red carpet from the walk, but this is the middle of the racetrack, as soon as the whole race is finished, and he walked past his 4 championships, then he got given a golden helmet by a whale or a frog or something, a fish. They love bikes. A 3rd place went, a good 3rd place, the first podium, another Spanish, there's Marcos Ramirez. So Spain all over the place, Acosta champion, going MotoGP. Jake Dixon 5th, fighting to keep 3rd place in the championship, Jake is. But it's Aldeguer that's the man that's catching him fast that keeps on winning at the moment. So Jake's struggling to hold on the 3rd. Sam Lowes came 7th, Rory Skinner 20th. So that was 2 boring races. So it was left to the Moto3 boys with the they open about 7 o'clock in the morning. I don't know how many people are watching. I was watching. And it was bizarre. You know, I always say on the podium, what I love about bikes is everybody on the podium is happy. You know, whether you won or lost, they're always smiling and making great interviews and happy where they're finished. Well, this podium was very unhappy. So we're going to, there were 4 riders all battling for the Moto3 title, but for 2, it was pretty much the end of their hopes. Because David Alonso, this amazing Colombian kid that we've all been so impressed with, a huge high side in qualifying. He was like in the air for 5 seconds, flew high and then landed on his back. But out he comes to race, as these boys do, 16 or wherever he is now. But he had another high side in the middle of the race and took down about 4 bikes behind him. He got from like 19th, he qualified badly because of the qualifying crash, and he got up to about 9th from 19th. And then another high side and took down another of the championship contenders, Daniel Holgado, Spanish, who led the championship earlier. So that pretty much put 2 of the possibles out of the title race with 2 runs to go. So we ended up with this fascinating finale where bizarrely there were only 3 left in the front group. So another crash took out 4th, 5th and 6th. And in the 3 were Jaume Masia, who's on a Honda, who's leading the championship, the Japanese boy Ayumi Sasaki, that's had 6 second places but not 1 at all, and Sasaki's teammate, the Dutch boy Colin Vijja. So we had this wonderful high-speed match going on, who's to lead at the last lap, and Sasaki kept on leading into the last corner, sort of almost rehearsing what was going to do, and Masia was hanging on. His Honda not as quick in the straight lines as the Husqvarna, so he couldn't really race as well. Anyway, on the middle of the penultimate lap, Vijja took the lead off of his teammate, Sasaki. So Sasaki's probably sitting there in second, and he's got his championship rival behind him in third, thinking, okay, the boy's going to let me by in the last corner. And he didn't. he braked, Vijja braked later than anybody else. Sasaki sort of came up the inside, and Vijja just braked later and managed to scramble around the corner. But it was his first ever win. He's never won. The last race, he had his first ever podium, so he's on a roll. But so the commentators were all going, we're not sure that was supposed to happen. But bizarrely, so then the wonderful instant post-race interviews, which I always enjoy in MotoGP, you know, we had Juan Masia. It was sort of just because he thinks his bike's not quick enough for that sort of track. So I think he's almost moaning to his engineers, he needs more power. So and he was the only Honda, I think, in the front pack of 6 towards the middle of the race. So he wasn't happy. And then Sasaki comes on, and they're all very political, you know, we are good for the team 1-2. But he was obviously well pissed off that he hadn't been allowed to take the extra points. And of course, that's his 7th, second place, I think 7th now, this season, without a win, so double reason to be pissed off. Then Colin was, on the slowing down lap, he was crying on his bike and waving to everybody, anybody, doing wheelies everywhere. But I think by the time he got back to the paddock and met all the engineers, there was a bit of he realised there had been probably a conversation before the race that should certain circumstances come up, that perhaps he might have to give way. And getting carried away in the race, I think, he should have given the place. I mean, team's a team, and you know, rookie's a rookie. And I think you have to help your teammates.
Even though it's your first win.
He'll get another win another day. His day will come. Yeah. But he was obviously looking a bit guilty. All the euphoria had gone out of him when he was interviewed. He was always a bit like the naughty kid that had been caught with his hand in the sweet jar. So interesting drama going on in MotoGP, but not the Moto3 is always a great race, but the other 2, but a procession for a change. Yes, the only other race was Macau. We didn't preview it last weekend because the first it's a 2 double-headed. They haven't raced there they missed out a couple of years.
You raced at Macau, didn't you?
Sure they were there. Oh, the one. It's the greatest race. People ask me what's my favourite track. It's Macau. And I've had tears there on 2 occasions, and when things went wrong. And I went out there in 1979, and I had a 1976 chassis, which I've been racing in. Unipart took me out to Malaysia to race in the Malaysian Grand Prix.
Is that sports cars?
Something else Grand Prix. No, singles Formula Atlantic. And back then, Macau Grand Prix was Formula Atlantic because the Australians raced Formula, they called it Formula Pacific. So it was always a meet. Americans used to come over, the Australians came up, the Europeans came down. But I was in this tatty old car, which I'd helped rebuild in the heat of Kuala Lumpur. We had to put a new bag tank in it. And these huge rubber balloons. Those old March 763 has got a sort of a nice little shaped, narrow at each end with a bulb in the middle where the fuel tank is. and tried to put this in. You have to cover it in talcum powder and try to get it to push in, because otherwise it's too much friction. And this was in the humidity of an unair conditioned Kuala Lumpur garage. Anyway, we rebuilt
brilliant
the
memories.
car, took it. Yeah, we took it to persuaded Unipart to take it from Kuala Lumpur down to Macau. And I qualified, I think, about fifth, and there was all Formula One stars, Riccardo Patrese. The factory March team were there with their brand new March 79Bs, the 79 car. And the Americans were over in their flying Tigers roots. But I had this dice with Riccardo Patrese, who won the Macau Grand Prix and was running ahead of him. And I think I was running fourth at that stage. It was a wonderful race. And the blooming gear link, a bolt, you bolt the gear lever at the back of the gear linkage fractured in the middle, and I ended up with no gears. And about 3 years later, I was battling for the lead with Maurizio Gugelmin, I think it was. And I was going to have it. He'd broken his fin. We're about only 2 laps to go. But my Ralton started jumping out of gear at the end of the main straight on deceleration, which often happens.
Yeah.
When the gearbox is slightly out of filter, you lift off the power and boom, jumps. Boom. But that didn't matter at the end of the main straight, because I just pushed it back in, down to second gear, around the Lisboa, back up the hill. And on this penultimate lap, after Teddy Yip's house, on the top of this wonderful mountainous right, left, a really fast car, I just had the lift in the middle of it. And it'd been no problem until that one lap, right in the middle of the corner, just lifted a fraction to get the nose in, and pop, out it came. So the car understeered instantly, kissed the barrier, broke the front wishbone. And on the same lap, was Gugelmin? I can't get the right drive. Anyway, he hit the wall, thinking I was still chasing him. So he didn't finish either. And Roberto Moreno, who was half a minute behind us, won the Macau Grand Prix.
Unbelievable. He'll never forget that.
I've raced in saloon cars, and it's a wonderful track, absolutely brilliant. And it was amazing. I think I looked at the qualifying times, and some people were saying huge gap between the top on the grid. I mean, it wasn't a competitive Formula 4 grid. It was round of the Southeast Asia non-championship, but a few Europeans went out there with the Prema team, who, of course, have the best Formula 4 cars in the world. And it proved a British dominated event. Arvin Lindblad, this really talented another sort of Ollie Behrman, they're talking about him in the same sort of words as Ollie Behrman. He finished first they had a sort of qualifying race in the wet, which had about 1 lap of racing, I think, and 8 laps of crashes and red and yellow flags and pace cars. Freddie Slater came second, this other really highly talented karting kid, Ginetta junior champion. Arvin was 16 in August. Freddie was 15. So he only just started racing single-seaters because he could race in Ginettas. They just started Ginettas, I mean. And it's just, they're so young, it's so crazy, but both highly talented. Arvin's actually of Indian and Swedish descent, but he's a British driver. Won karting, third in the Italian F4, so 2 real talents. But poor old Freddie in the main race had an electrical problem, dropped to 18th and came back to 9th. But Arvin won both races. So this weekend coming is the big event, Formula 3s, GTs, huge weekend. And it's the most magnificent racing circuit.
Is the track the same now to how it was in the 70s?
Yeah, it's the same track.
And what's the lap times for these guys in the Formula 4?
2.5 minutes. 2.5 minutes.
What were you doing?
That's one's a gap. I've no idea.
Can't remember.
All I remember is when we came out of the last corner, when I was there was a bit of barrier and then just a run off into the water, into the sea. The whole main straight just had the sea on the left. Now there's a whole road of hotels and roads, and it was amazing. Back to 1979.
That's the ancestral home for Feiho Racing as well, motorbikes, British superbikes. We've got one more thing to cover before we have coming ups. One more bit of racing this weekend. Of course, it was the Race of Remembrance up at Anglesey. Good for those guys.
Oh yes, of course.
The annual Race of Remembrance. There's normally an Elise there that dominates, but he wasn't there. Rob, or I don't know his last name. I should know his name, but it was a Caterham 1, 2, 3 with the Williams Caterham team coming home in first place. So
without you, how did they win without you? Where was your invite then?
Very easily. No, I don't get invites these days. But
any of your mates? Who was in the winning? Any of your mates, Freddie
and Henry Williams was in. He runs Williams Automobiles, and there's loads of the boys that were in not in actually the same year as me, but there were lots of them that either side of me. And then Darren Burke, he's a pro racer, British GTs and stuff. He was in the second team with Ben Timmons, who won Academy last year. Roger Patke, Callum Locke, Toby Ballard, and Henry Williams won. Yeah, it's good. Lots of names on there that you would know. And
good. Well done, just for going, boys. Well,
yeah,
so many of the army boys go there, don't they? They're getting their arts down.
All the military. Danny was there, our mate, and James obviously runs it. Jim runs it as well. So yeah, it was good, brilliant event. And I don't think they got that wet. It wasn't the best weather, but for Anglesey, it was like a walk in the park, I think. But so Caterham 1, 2, 3. Well done, boys. And in terms of coming up, what do we got?
Obviously Formula One Vegas, big. Nobody probably noticed the World Rally Championship coming to an end in Japan. Kalle Rovanperä has already won it, so there's no excitement out there. So I doubt we'll see much press of that. MotoGP go to their penultimate round in Qatar. That huge long straight will please the Ducati Power boys, I think. So MotoGP in Qatar is big news. And then Macau's got the Formula 3. And the Formula 3 haven't been there for a while. It's just been Formula 4 regional because, again, I don't know why the reasons, what after COVID. So it's the full Formula 3 crowd. There's 30 of them going back there. And they've got a lot of power. It's the same sort of entry, same cars, but half of them staying on. Some drivers coming out from below to have a debut in Formula 3. And Dan Ticktum going back to Formula 3. He's won Macau twice. So Dan probably still wants to wave his talent around and still believes he can get a Grand Prix seat. Luke Brown and the other British entrant go down there. Sophia Fleur should be on the field. She's raced Formula 3 this year. Of course, she had that horrendous accident. Must be 5 years ago now when she flew into that press tower in the most frightening crash. So yeah, Macau, really a lot of action. MotoGP, and of course Formula 1. So a lot of action coming this weekend.
Good. Stay tuned. See you next week. Thanks for joining as always.
Cheers.